Turf Talk with Drew Miller.
For this week's episode of Tiger Turf Talk, we host Miss Fawn Renae, owner and operator of Fawn Renae Designs and Those Plant Ladies. During this week's podcast, we get into the different aspects of her career, ranging from when she started in turfgrass management out of a small town in North Carolina, and now where she's the owner and operator of 2 landscape-based companies. This is a fantastic episode where we get to see an entire new aspect of the industry, empowering those around them in order to create a community where everyone is able to learn, grow, and educate each other based on the different aspects of her company. She gave the kids insight on how she operates in her design business, all the different aspects she takes into account as she is operating on a national level, working on different designs from the West Coast to the East Coast, understanding plant selection, the hardiness zones that she's working in, and really gives just a great understanding of how we as landscape designers need to comprehend the site itself and how proper use of plant material, different aspects of the landscape need to be at the forefront of our decision-making process when designing the landscape. It is evident how passion is the driving force behind her different experiences in her career and where she is today, and how she wants to bring those opportunities to those around her to better herself, as well as the people who work for her, the community members that want to be a part of those plant ladies, and really focus on bringing those into the fold and having them understand how to properly take care of their landscape and really have a outdoor space where living and care are harmonious. We want to send a huge shout out to Miss Renae. We really appreciate your time. This is fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time. I cannot thank you enough. I hope you all enjoyed this episode of Tiger Turf Talk. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 9th episode of Tiger Turf Talk. I'm your host, Drew Miller, with your co-host, Rylan Harris. We have a very special guest today, Miss Fawn Renae of Fawn Renae Designs and Those Plant Ladies. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Of course, we're excited to have you. So I'm going to start off. We sort of made a connection through social media on Instagram, and I believe that was actually a couple years ago. Before Those Plant Ladies, before you got started, and you had been working in the turfgrass industry as well as sort of a campus management. So you spoke to us a little bit earlier about how you started with a farming background and in a town where you had more cows than people. So could you sort of speak to your journey and how you came to this point where you have now this small business that's growing?
Yes, absolutely. So, I think that as we're growing up, we don't think of those times, especially if they were hard, as being growing moments, but that's definitely what my childhood was. Um, I grew up on a small farm in North Carolina, and we raised all of the food that we ate. So all the crops, and we had animals as well. So we really learned how to live off the land, and we didn't have, we had probably roughly about an acre and a half of cropland. But we managed it all by hand. We had one tractor, and that was only for my dad to use. So we learned how to use all the hand tools. And, once the crops get a certain size, you can't put a tractor in there anyway. So we really learned, how to use our hands. And I think that, especially while we were in school and not being able to participate in sports and do the extracurricular things, and knowing that we always had to go back to the farm and take care of our obligations there and our duties, I think that helped keep us focused. But, we learned how to make what we were doing on a day-to-day fun. I haven't mentioned this yet, but I have a twin sister. Her name is Heather. And so we have always done everything together. I remember we tell the story of riding the school bus, and looking at other people's houses and thinking about how we would change their landscapes to like make them more visually appealing, like aesthetically appealing. And I think that's where my design business got started, just because that seemed so natural to me to be able to see the difference. Like, and once you see HGTV over and over, and you're like, I could do that. Like I can see that. And even thereafter, it's like, oh, I could have done it this way. But yes, I think that, that those times helped mold where I am today and helped get me to where I'm at. I will say that, while we took care of crops and plants at home, we also had grass, and my sister and we took care of our yard at home, and she had the front yard and I had the backyard, and we competed with each other as to who took care of their yard the best. And that didn't include, that included the mowing patterns and everything else, but also like the weeds and all of that. So it was kind of, once we were in doing it, we were like, how can we make this better? Like, how can we improve our work of art? So we were just constantly wanting to know how to do more. And then, like we talked about previously, whenever we were in high school, we found out that they had the horticulture and turf grass programs, and that's where we we elected, I think those were elected classes too, if I'm saying that right.
Yep.
And we were always the only females. Well, there were more females in like the horticulture classes, but turf grass classes, we were usually the only females. And from there, like, we just loved it. We loved everything about it. We got to take care of some of our high school fields. And, while we were in some of those classes, we actually designed some landscapes. And for our, I think it was one of our county buildings, we designed it and we also installed it. And our teachers allowed us to lead the crew of how to, install the plants and where the plants were going and all of that stuff. And, it was kind of, from then on, we were like, yeah, this is what we're supposed to be doing. So I do want to tell the story of, and I don't know if any of your students still do this or did this whenever they were, I think it was middle school, where you take this test that determines what you're going to be, like your career test. Okay.
Yep.
So mine was a firefighter or a landscape architect. And my sister's was a dancer or a landscape architect. So we didn't find this out until recently, doing another interview where we were like, oh my gosh, that makes sense, because she's like the creative and photographer and all of that stuff. And I'm, doing more of the hands-on labors and stuff. But anyways, moving forward, so Heather and I both went to school went to a community college locally, and we received our associates in both horticulture and turf grass management. The good thing, or the part that I love about the program that we were a part of, is that we were able to do a lot of hands-on learning. So while we were in the classroom learning, then we extended and went outside and, operated the equipment, and we had a golf course that we worked on. We also took care of we had a minor league team as well, minor league team as well, that we helped take. To me, I'm a visual learner, and so being able to take the knowledge that I was learning in the classroom and actually implement it was huge. And so right after college, I was approached, actually, I think it was like the last month, I was getting ready to graduate, and I was like, what am I going to do? I have no idea. And I was approached through my professor, who had a connection with a guy that was at Charlotte Country Day School. So his name is Bill McLemore, and he reached out and he said, hey, I have a position open on the crew. It's in Charlotte, which that would have been an hour and a half drive from where I was at home. So here I am, a small town girl, took a big job in the city, or a job in the big city, and lived, in a small apartment, knew nobody, but yeah, I was committed to doing whatever it took to get my start and get my foot in the door in the industry. From there, so I worked on the athletic fields and maintained campus. So, all of the hands-on work that you can think of, many, many hours, days on weed eaters, like all the
The
things.
best thing you can do.
Yeah, the best. I always say that that's like the best way to get solid shoulders and arms, though, is to carry that weed
Oh
eater
yeah.
for hours
Oh yeah.
on it.
It doesn't work for
Um,
me, but I mean, you know.
um, but so I eventually worked my way up the ladder. There was not any other positions available, so it was just my boss and then, all of the workers underneath. And I was really taking care and finding more interest in the sports fields. And, I think that hard work pays off. And I always stayed till the work was done, even when it was clock out, time to clock out and go home. I was the one that stayed. I put in the hours, I put in the time, and ultimately I impressed, my boss enough to create the position of the assistant groundskeeper. And so that's where I started my management position. And I managed a crew of, I think it was about roughly 4 or 5 guys. So I always had a group of guys around me, loved it. But um, I found that whenever I was working with my guys that, I feel like when you're in a job and you're just doing a job to have a job, there's not much fulfillment in that. And I always wanted to lead people who loved what they do and who wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So that's where, well, backtrack, March of 2019, my son was born. So I had my first child, well, my first and only child.
Congratulations.
Uh, and thank you. And it was about 7 months in, it was about this time last year, where I was like, man, I was still traveling. So I moved, once I got married, I ended up moving and I traveled to work, traveled an hour to work every day. So that was quite extensive once having a baby and only, getting X amount of hours of sleep a night. So that took a toll on me mentally and physically. But, back to that piece of always wanting to lead a crew to, bigger and better things. Not to say that what I was doing wasn't bigger and better, just, lead people who want to be a part of what they were doing, who wanted to show up for work, who wanted to, put in the hard manual labor, who saw the bigger picture. So I created Fawn Renae Designs. So Fawn Renae Designs is my virtual landscape design business, and that is the business where I am designing landscapes virtually all over the United States. It didn't start off that way. It started off as doing designs for friends because they were like, hey, I know you can do this. Like, please just do my landscape. I'll pay you. And I'm like, okay.
Hopefully they did pay you,
Yeah. And I think that if it's something that you love, there was many times that I did it for free just because I loved it. And I knew that I was giving something away and being helpful for somebody else. But, I think that that's where having that almost burnout feeling of traveling and being away from my son and, not feeling like I was a part of something bigger. That's where I pushed that business and started doing more on I say free time, but then I look back and I'm like, when did you have free time? I guess I just made the time up. I'm not really sure. Maybe those days were full of like 36-hour days. I don't know. But it was crazy. I just did it, and ultimately saw that I was bringing in income and that I could, if I took that leap, that I could potentially make up my salary position. I also at this time so I did a design, and then my client was like, I want you to install it. And I was like, okay. So I was like, okay, I need to get a crew together. Well, after asking, so I have an older sister as well. And I was like, hey, do you know anybody that wants to be interested? So she pulled together a team of women who, and it ended up being all women. And that's where those plant ladies came from was, it started off as my sister and I creating this business to help educate, inspire, and empower other women. But then it was, well, why don't we just have women to install the crew and like teach other people what we're doing, even though they don't necessarily are professionals in the industry. So we gave these people a heads up, and they took off of work. Some of them were, like nurses and teachers, and like they came from all over in the corporate world. They came from all over, and they wanted to be a part of what we were doing, and they wanted to learn about how to take care of their own landscape, and they wanted to learn how to get their hands dirty, and they wanted to learn how to properly plant a plant, and they just wanted to learn all the things, and they wanted to have fun while doing that. And they're like, hey, I think I would have fun working for you, so we'll take off work to be a part of it. So fast forward to March of this year, I took the leap full time to do both of these businesses, and stepped away. It was actually, I made the decision probably late February and gave my job a month's notice. Turns out I left the week after COVID started. So all of those fears and anxiety of, are you making the right decision? Are you sure? Like, you're leaving a salary, you're leaving benefits, you're leaving all of this to pursue the unknown. But, I think that fear came, but I always told myself that I knew 100% that this was the direction that I was supposed to be going. I knew that it was going to be rocky. I knew that it was going to be difficult, but I knew that this was my next journey, and this was my next path to take. So it's been a wild ride. And, like I said, the designs have now become virtual. It has helped. And it was a perfect timing, given that COVID, everybody had went virtual. So now I'm able to reach those clients that are across the United States without ever stepping foot on their property. I'm able to work from home. I'm able to do more because I don't have to get in a car and travel to these places. So, and I've really tried to perfect that. There's a huge learning curve when starting your own business. But just taking every experience and every as a learning lesson, and just making myself better, making these businesses better with those plant ladies. So my sister is a wedding photographer. So after college, she went into wedding photography. She married a Marine and moved on base, and he bought her first camera, and she was around nobody. And she was like, she planned her own wedding, and she was always interested in that wedding scene. And so she was like, I want to try this out. So she picked up her camera and taught herself everything about photography. So fast forward 10 years for her, she was presented with COVID, and all of her weddings for 2020 were postponed to 2021. So she was like, well, I think this is a perfect time to pursue those plant ladies and to push that business that much harder. So we have been having events the best that we can. So we've had a couple workshops, one this summer and one this fall, where we did summer containers, and we taught people how to properly plant a container. And it was a great little outing. People to get out of the house. We still social distanced, and we still do installations. So those plant ladies still do the installations for Fawn Renae Designs, And the good thing about that is I get to oversee those installations. So you get to have the designer on site doing the actual installation. So we're still going through with that model that we had this time last year, where we're getting volunteers. Well, we have our paid team of professionals. So we've actually have a team of professionals who, are part of our team, but then we also welcome volunteers who want to come and be a part of what we're doing, and the same, like, just to come and learn, have fun, learn about how to take care of plants in their own landscape, and really just try to give women that that opportunity to not be so intimidated, given that this is like a predominantly male industry. And I think that pain point for me comes from being the only female in most of my classes, in my career, in who I led. It was always men. And as I said before, like, there is nothing wrong with that at all. Like, I loved it, but I just know that so many people approached me and said, hey, like, why do women not want to be a part of this? Or why do our next generation, like, why do our youth not want to be a part of, this turf grass program, or this horticulture, or getting their hands dirty? And, I would always say they do. People want to be a part of it. They just want the opportunity, and they just want to, like, they just need somebody to show them what that looks like. And I think that, especially given that we are, I'm a visual learner. I consume Instagram, like, I consume Facebook, like, I'm on all those platforms. So, to me, I was like, that's where I need to be. Like, I need to show, I want to be that person who shows the next generation, or, the other women, that they can do this, and that this is possible, and that, you can have fun while doing it. And yes, it's hard work. Like, don't get me wrong. You are going to be tired, but it is so rewarding at the end of the day to be able to sit back and see that, hey, like, I did that. I created that. I put that mowing pattern in, or I painted that straight line, or I, installed that landscape. And for me, it's to say, hey, oh my gosh, like, I thought of that design and I can see it come to life before my eyes. Like, there's something rewarding in that.
So real quick, I know I'm probably the only one that's curious. Who won in the backyard versus front yard competition?
I did.
Obviously.
She would say she did, though.
Obviously. I know how I'm competitive with my siblings, so I was just curious.
Yes. So yeah, that's kind of where my journey has been. I've been, running a business from home, 2 businesses from home. And I'm sure I left some pieces out of my story, but, for the most part, that is what has brought me to where I am today. And I wouldn't change it for a thing.
So, as the plant lady in the industry, where did you find your passion for plants and the science behind taking care of them, like, as whether it be landscape or turf grass on, like, the baseball fields? Or
Yeah, thanks, Rylan. So I think that piece came from being around it as much as I was in those younger years, being around plants. It came second nature to me. And, like, I knew how to grow a tomato, like, I knew how to do all of that. And like, it was like, that's just what you do. But then I think, as we got older, and I think as I started noticing more things in the industry, so particularly, I remember seeing a magazine of, it was, I think, it was either the Charlotte Motor Speedway or Daytona, and seeing, like, all of those logos on that green patch. And I was like, how did they do that? And, I was like, that's real grass. And I think that's what initially was like, people do this for a living? What? And then from there, it was like, oh my gosh, people do this for, sports fields. Like, that's real grass. Like, there was just so much of it that inspired me. And I didn't touch on that point of doing the Charlotte Knights and the Carolina Panthers. So I missed that whole point of my journey. I did that. I worked on those crews on the weekend. So my job at Charlotte Country Day School was Monday through Friday. So on Saturdays and Sundays during those seasons, I worked on those professional teams. And a quick story on how I got started with the Carolina Panthers. And it just is kind of like a learning point for me that my boss at Charlotte Country Day had took me to the Carolina Panthers. So him and Tom Vaughan were good friends, and he wanted me to see them preparing the field for a game. It was right around Christmas. And so I went out there. They kind of left, we're chit-chatting, and I was out there with the paint crew, and one of the guys was like, "Here, you want to paint?" And it was the giant panther head. And I was like, "What?" For some reason, the words "yes" came out of my mouth, and I was like, "Yes, I'll paint." So here I am painting the giant panther head on a NFL professional field for the first time. And it wasn't until the next season that Tom called my boss and was like, "Hey, I have a position available, and we're interested in Fawn being a part of our crew on the weekends." So, that's where that whole saying yes to, stepping out of my comfort zone and just doing it, actually ended up being how I became a part of the Carolina Panthers grounds crew. And I did that for 5 seasons. I did the Charlotte Knights for 1 season. That is a whole nother ball game, literally, and just as physically. Dirt work is no joke.
That's what I do.
Yes. So it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. My boss was Matt Parrott, and he came from Bowie, the Bowie Bay Sox. Am I saying that right? Bowie Bay Sox?
Yes,
Isn't that
you're
near
saying
your
that right.
area? Okay. So that was his first season. So I've worked with a lot of great industry leaders, and been around a lot of people, learned a lot of things to do and things not to do. But yes, dirt work is intense, especially when you're doing it as a full-time job, and then you go on your time off and do it on the weekends, and you're like, "What am I doing here? Like, this is ridiculous."
What happened to my time off?
Yes. So I enjoyed it, but that would be the reason why I didn't do it for another season. Just given that, I had my own fields to maintain at that time. Like, I was still maintaining baseball, softball, all those other sports, and then to do somebody else's field. So that was a lot, but and definitely enjoyed it. But those guys that do dirt work, I mean, I feel like turf grass is a small portion of baseball, and then the dirt is like the biggest part.
It's always interesting to like see that, when it would be 7 hours on dirt, 2 hours on grass, and your degrees in turf grass, but they don't really get into all the different aspects of the clay.
Yep. Exactly. And, as you work your way up, you do more with the grass part. But as somebody coming on to be a part of the crew, like, you just got to know, hey, my job's going to be dirt management. And that's what it is. And, not to say that your job isn't as important as the grass job, but, it's laborsome and it's intense.
So,
does that answer your question, Ryland?
Yeah. I think that's
yes,
a yes.
Okay.
So what was your inspiration about venturing out? You explained sort of how everything sort of fell into place right before COVID. Where did those plant ladies come from? And obviously you sort of explained it a little bit, but what made you want to go beyond that and go further into the idea of having this company?
So whenever my sister and I, we had many conversations on the phone on my hour drive home from work, where I would just be like, like, what if what we've experienced in our past, like, what if those, that our upbringing, and what if our, the industries that we've been in for the past 10 years, like what if we pursued, like what if all of that led us to doing something together? Like what if we combined her industry, that soft and curated and, you know, fine art type of industry, with the, you know, the more rough and dirty, like the sports fields and the horticulture and turf grass part that I've been doing. And, you know, I didn't know much about entrepreneurship. So my sister obviously has been her own boss since the beginning of time, apparently. But, you know, I always wanted to have her schedule. Like she just, you know, she was her own boss. And I was like, you know, I love that part, but I also know that like, that's just not where this industry is. And, you know, yes, you can have your own job, like you can have your own business, but to be, you know, I think like in the sports field world, it's still more of that corporate world. Like you're still climbing the ladder, you're still working your way up. And for those plant ladies, I was like, you know, well, what if we combine the things that we have been doing together? And what if, you know, like what if those pain points were all for this bigger vision? And I think that it was whenever, you know, like it was whenever I remember just thinking like, what, there has to be more. I started to really feel like I saw the work that she was producing and I knew that it was something beyond like what she was giving herself credit for, the images that she was producing, where she was traveling. Like I knew that it was amazing work. And so that's when I started stepping into her business and I was like, hey, I'll take over. Like you need to be on Pinterest. Because that's where I was finding my inspirations. I was like, you need to be on Pinterest and you need to be posting more on Instagram. So then I took over her business and started doing like, learned all of those, like took courses on Pinterest and all of that, taught myself and really just kind of dove head first into, you know, another business and was like, hey, she was like, I'll do whatever you tell me I need to do. I just can't do it all. So you take it on. So, you know, I think that that's where that entrepreneurial part came in. And from there, like, I think we started seeing, like, we were listening to the same podcast. So, given those hours upon hours that I had, you know, with a piece of equipment on my back or that I was riding and having earbuds in and really being able to listen to podcasts, that's one thing that I do miss, is just that alone time. But to be able to like, you know, listen to podcasts all the time, I was always listening to business podcasts of how to, you know, market myself and how to grow a business. And but for me, like I was listening for her. I was listening to how to grow her business. And so, you know, that's what I did. And then whenever we had this idea, I was like, we could do it. Like, I think we could do it. It's just going to take work, but we've got to start somewhere. So, you know, I think that we ultimately wanted to be able to work together, wanted to have our own freedom of our time, especially me, more time with my son. And, you know, I wanted to give women that opportunity that I felt like I mean, don't get me wrong, there's great industry leaders in the sports field world that I was around. I mean, they're some of the best. But I always looked for that person who, like, to me, I always looked for that mentor. And I wanted somebody who looked like me, talked like me, like joked around like me, like they had to look like me. You know, but I never found that. And obviously there's not anybody that's other than my sister that would be. But so
Just
I'm
a
like,
little
well,
bit.
maybe
You look
you
similar.
just.
Just a little bit.
So I
Identical
was
twin.
like,
Yeah.
well, I guess I just need to, like, what if that I am that person for somebody else? Like, what if somebody else can look at me and say, hey, like she's doing it, then I can do it, you know? And I think that that's where, you know, having other women, giving other women the opportunity to be a part and come and learn and grow alongside us and teach them the education that we know. And that's ultimately where those plant ladies originated from. And that passion for entrepreneurship started with my sister's business, but now has transformed into my own two businesses.
So you just mentioned education and how you have, is it two associate's degrees or the same within the same?
Two.
Two. Okay. Uh, what school did you go to? You said it was community college, and could you sort of speak to the experience of that? Because it is important that and I try and make sure that the kids learn this in class, that community college is always a great option, like money wise, making sure you save that money. And with your community college, you obviously have the opportunity to do something like horticulture and turf. But even sort of like with us here in Northern Virginia, you have 2-year degree. You can segue into any 4-year program with acceptance to whatever it is. Could you just sort of speak to your experience and what that was like in the sense of having those 2 degrees?
Absolutely. So, whenever I started the horticulture program, that was, I always knew that I wanted to do the turf grass part too, but everybody kept pointing me in the direction. Like all the counselors were like, start with horticulture, start with horticulture. So that's where I started. And I always knew that I wanted to do the turf grass part. So immediately after that, I started the turf grass program. And that those both are 2-year degrees. And like I mentioned before, the I think the best thing about the college that I went to, so it was Catawba Valley Community College was where I went to. And it was for us financially, being that my sister and I were both going to college at the same time, like financially, my parents couldn't make it work. Now, did we research all of the other ways that we could have been, gotten scholarships and things? No, we probably didn't, because we didn't, our excuse would have been time. But I think that I don't regret my education at all. Like I don't wish that I would have went to a 4-year degree. There's been times that I wish that I did, because I would have had the upper hand in a lot of circumstances and a lot of opportunities. But I wouldn't trade that hands-on learning that I received in the community college setting for anything. Um, so yeah, what was the other part of that question?
Just sort of the experience, like community college wise, in the sense of it's you don't live on campus or anything like that, sort of that idea.
Yeah, no, it was all that goes back to having those obligations back at home and having to go back home and take care of the farmland. So, we were about 30 minutes away from college. So community college, we worked after hours.
Did you
Still
want
somehow.
did you want to get to a 4-year so you didn't have to have those obligations anymore?
I was such a homebody, and I still am, that I never really wanted to go away. Our older sister did go graduate from NC State. And so I kind of watched her and was like, I don't really want to do that. So I still don't think if I would have went away for college that I would have loved it and I would have thrived. Um, but I think that that just speaks to who I am, and being just from that, like I said, I am a homebody. Like I like to be around home, and I like to be close to family. So it definitely fit me well. I mean, unless my family lived near the university, that would have been a great option. But that wasn't up my alley. Um, yeah.
So going along with that last question, how did the double major, or the double major, how did that, like, what were the benefits of doing that rather than just doing one at a time or just the one?
So a lot of those classes actually, so I did two associates, and if you did an associate, that's usually 2 years. So if you combine that, you would think that's 4 years, but actually doing both of those, it only took me 3 years and maybe an extra semester of like internships. So 3 years and 2 degrees, I really couldn't. I was like, why not? Like, I'm here. And I didn't have any opportunities presenting themselves as to where I was going to go at that time. Like, nothing was pulling me. I had some opportunities to like intern and do things like that, but nothing really ever stuck out to me of where I could go. And, like I said earlier, like taking that big job to the city, that was a huge move for me. But, I think that just goes along with sticking to your gut. And if you feel like it's the right move, then you do it.
Um, Sort of to go into the idea of the your passion and everything, how important is it for, say, a young individual in this program to understand the meaning of hard work? Obviously, you grew up on a farm and everything. Um, how important is it to understand that before entering a field like this?
Huge, huge. I think that, I never want to take away from, like, I know that the image that I'm portraying is, not to sound like not to sound conceited by any means, but like the beauty of what could be from the industry, but I don't want to take away from the hard work aspect of it. Like this is not for everybody. I don't want to make it seem like this is something that everybody can do. It is physical labor. It is, you are working, if, going back to the sports field industry, you're working out in all the elements. You're working in all of them. And if that is in an area like for here in North Carolina, that was everything from snow. And that's not just watching the pretty snow come down from the sky. It's actually cleaning up the snow, like cleaning up, making sure that, you're out there when everybody else is sledding. Like you're the one that's taking care of all of that. And in the job roles that I was in, to the extreme heat, the 100-degree days when they still want to play baseball, they still want to have those sports, like you're out there in it. And for all of those sports fields, like they're looking to you to present that to them. And there are a lot of times that, I think as being in the industry, you look around and you're like, wait, I went to school for this. Like I have a degree in this. And, it kind of was like, wait, what am I doing here? Like this is intense. And this is not what a lot of people go to school to do. Like a lot of people go to school to sit behind a desk and to, have an office job. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for people like I hope that are in your program who like to work with their hands and who like to be outdoors, just know that the hard work aspect of it is something that, you have to push yourself. You have to show up every single day. Like that's huge for this industry. And when people say like we don't think that people want to do that, I think that's because there aren't a lot of kids and youth and women who are out there doing the manual labor and who know what it takes. Now, all of that can be taught, but I just want to press the point that this is hard work. And yes, you can do it, but don't think that you're just going to come in, punch a clock, and not have to carry your weight, because there's a lot that's involved.
Now, with such a young company, what are some of your goals and aspirations for you and your employees in the future?
Yeah, are you speaking to which business?
To those plant ladies.
Okay. So, those plant ladies, we've started small. We've done installations locally. Sorry, my son is in my eyes. We've started locally doing the installations that I have done within North Carolina. But, Fawn Renae Designs is doing the designs virtually all over the United States. And, we have a lot of opportunities to do the installations elsewhere. Being that we are a smaller company and a startup company at this time, like I'm like, we just got to get our solid foundation right now. So, we've had other opportunities to kind of push the limits as far as like, push where we're being seen without giving out all those details. But, really trying to make sure that we have that solid foundation and that we know what we're about, what our mission is. I think that, our options are endless. We want to be all over the United States. We hopefully one day can be, maybe some of your students can be leading those Plant Ladies cruise in their area. That would be cool. I think that,
That would be
as
phenomenal.
as we continue to grow and have professionals, I think that for me, whenever I'm hiring, like I want to make sure that there is that education piece that people do know. Like, yes, I have people that are working in the business that aren't, that do not have this education, but they're working in other aspects like the marketing or like the merchandise or stuff. But for those people, as we're talking about, like getting the education out there and teaching the crews and, just spreading and growing, it's going to be those students and those people who have the education, who have invested in themselves and said, hey, like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to go and seek this, and get a degree in it. And, experience is everything. I don't want to say like that education is the end all be all, but, education is huge and experience is huge. So not only having that education piece, but actually implementing it and knowing how to use that education in the day-to-day life. So, I think that we have a lot of great things coming down the pipeline as far as where we're going to go and where we're going to be. But I don't want to, Heather and I talk about this a lot. We're like, we just like, does it feel right? Is this a heck yes? If it's not a heck yes, then it's a heck no. Like if it's got to feel right, it's got to be the right timing. It's got to be on brand. It's got to be, I don't want to just make a dollar to make a dollar. I want to make sure that we're taking the business where it's supposed to go and, growing. If that's at a small, slow scale, then that's what we do. But if it's fast, then, it has been fast this past year. It's been extremely fast. We've grown what most businesses grow in 5 years. We've grown in 1. And a lot of that does go back to the branding and all of the work that Heather's doing on the marketing aspect and inside of things. And, creating the beautiful images and taking the photographs while we're installing and, having all of those images helps get people in front of people's faces, especially since that's where we're all at, is in front of social media and, the internet. So yeah, I think that I don't think that answered your question. I don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere and probably fast.
Definitely did.
Yes, it
Definitely
did.
did.
Yeah. Thank you.
So obviously you're doing this with your sister. How important do you think it is to you sort of having it as a family business, starting off with your sister and working with her on a day-to-day? And obviously you spoke to how she sort of moved her focus towards the company. How important is that to you?
It's huge. We were always side by side and we did not cherish that growing up. We had the same vehicle. We had the same jobs. We had shared the same college books. Like we were literally always together. And it wasn't until we moved away and got our own careers that we were like, man, I miss that. I miss being side by side. I miss, like we used to do the dumbest things outside together. Like just, while we were picking up rocks out of the garden, we would throw them into this wash pad and see who could like play basketball, like who could shoot the best basketball. And it wasn't a basketball, it was a rock. And, like those are the things that I look back on. I'm like, man, that was kind of fun. I'm like, who am I saying that? Because I hated it then. Like I hated picking up rocks, but it made me who I am today. Being able to have a business where we can work together. The hardest part about having a business together is that we do talk about business a lot. So we have had to learn how to kind of separate it a bit. We will, like, if we want to talk about business, we'll send each other a text and be like, hey, do you have a minute to talk about business? Because, I was so used to talking to her on the way home from work on my hour drive home, and we would just talk about whatever and just talk about life and goals and visions. And we didn't really get to, we didn't have this huge role that we have now, and huge and business and team to take care of. And we didn't have all of that. So, now that we do, we try to be respectful of each other's time and the time that we do have together, and to not talk about work as much. But it is good to know that, I know that she's working, like, if anybody, and we have to learn how to talk to our team in a different way, because for her and we tell everybody that we have telepathy, so we can read each other's minds. So, but when you have a business, it's kind of hard because they can't read your minds. So we're trying to always communicate and over communicate, because, we forget that, like, oh, we never said that out loud. We both thought it, but, hey, we still need to say that to the rest of the team. So, there's some fun things that we get to do I always say nobody makes me laugh the way that she makes me laugh. So I always get this weird laugh whenever I'm around her. So it's fun to be able to work alongside her, especially when we're doing installations, and to see, for the past 10 years, I've been doing this by myself and didn't have that camaraderie that I long for, especially that I wish that I had growing up. And so to have that again is priceless.
So talking with you, it seems like some of your goals are to inspire and educate and empower other females to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty in working in this industry. So what are you really like looking for when you're trying to hire these women? What is the characteristic that you're looking for to see, oh, they can do this? Like how do you know that they're
Yeah.
willing to do it?
Yeah, I like that question. So we kind of, especially when we're talking about, so there's different aspects of the business, but when we're talking about the installations part and being able to choose like who can hire, like, yeah, or who we hire for the team, everybody has probably watched the Tiger King, and the Carol Baskin, how I think the Carol Baskin way that she brought on volunteers and ended up like they worked a certain amount of hours, and then they worked their way up to a paid spot on the crew. And, that's ultimately where we're going with the volunteers and the time and the hours that they put in. We keep count of all of that, and we take that into consideration for paid, positions. So yeah, I think that when we've hired for other positions within the business, it's always been because we had a need, and in our minds, we never voiced it out loud, like publicly, but it's always been somebody has walked into like we've always crossed paths with somebody at like the perfect timing. For our marketing director, it was because I was walking with my neighbor one morning, and she was like, hey, I think you need such and such. I think you need Claire. Claire can do your copywriting and, help with your marketing stuff, because there's a lot of time and energy that goes into preparing that, and not only preparing it, but then just making sure that it goes live. And there's not only on social media, but the website and public relations, like PR stuff, like there's a lot. So everybody has came to us on our team currently by either somebody who's recommended them, or they have reached out and just sparked up a conversation. Alexa, who it came from Clemson. So she worked at the Maryland Extension Agency, and she was there after her graduating Clemson, and she was moving back to North Carolina, and she saw my design business, reached out and was like, hey, I'm moving back and I would love to figure out a way of how, I wasn't looking for anybody, but she just wanted to see if there was a way that she could be involved and, support her family. So, excuse me. So she connected with me. We had a Zoom meeting, and turns out she had a passion for education. And I was like, I really think those plant ladies could use you. I really think that this suits you even more. Like she does some work for Fawn Renae Designs, but to hear her passions in education, and I think that that's helped us grow that piece of the business, as far as getting, we have a calendar that's launching that she's helped out with, where she's helped on the back end with some of our workshops. There's so many different things that we want to do. And when we get an idea, we're like, hey, let's do it. Like, why not? And so just having somebody else who can, who has the education and who has the knowledge and the experience and can say, hey, yes, like I'll take this on, like I'll take this off your back. That's been huge. And to trust that they know what they're talking about. And there's not a lot of back and forth, and there's not a lot of micromanaging from anybody on our team. That's been huge. I think setting expectations is the biggest thing of being a business owner and leading a team. So making sure that they're all on the direction, but to give them the space to do the things that we ask them to do, and to do them, oftentimes when we sit back and let them take ownership and let them take on something themselves, they do it way better than we would have been able to do it ourselves. So, hiring people who have different skill sets, can fill different needs. It's been through through the community locally. But also we've got people virtually who are working for us that we have never met in person. So the internet is a great resource.
That's awesome. The thing that I want to ask about is, you were talking about how this woman has passion for education and whatnot. On your website, there are a lot of different aspects that you've created that go outside of the company, in a sense, sort of like you were talking about workshops and different ideas. What was the idea behind all that? Again, you're trying to get your brand out there and whatnot, but with all of that, I mean, the website is phenomenal from what I've seen and what I went through. There's so much information for everything from blogs to, again, workshops, different ideas. What was sort of the idea behind that? Was that just sort of working with different people, or was this always sort of in the plan for the business?
It's always been something that Heather has told me that I needed to do. So she's kind of always seen the need for, being that she was an outsider and she went to school for this, but she didn't pursue this as a career. Like, she always saw the work that I was doing and was like, people need to see this. Like, people need to know what this is about. And, I think that every idea that we've had, like we're rolling out the calendar that, and it's in final edits this week, hopefully to launch on pre-sale start on Monday. And whenever I was reviewing it, it's so funny because Heather has been telling me that we needed to have a calendar for probably 10 years. And whenever I was looking at it, so it's going to be Heather's beautiful images of landscapes that she's taken all around the world, and combined with, plant knowledge of like to-dos for the average homeowner to do, like for their landscape and also for their lawn. So whenever I was looking at that this week, I was like, man, this is crazy how this has finally come to fruition. Heather has been harping on me to do this for years, and finally, like, this has finally come about. And for the other aspects of the business, I think that it's just been an idea. Like we've always knew that, I think that we try to listen to our audience. We try to listen to what the people who are around us, what they want and what they need. When people say that they just wanted, like when they saw our company doing our first installation of all females, then we got people who were like, I would come and do that and just do it for free. And we're like, what? People would do that for free? And that's where the volunteers came from. So like every idea that we get, we just start kind of rolling with it. And you never, I think that the best part about being in business with my sister is we think outside of the box. So, the industry as a whole, I think that the industry has made huge leaps as to where it's at today, but I think that there could always be more. And, I think that what we do is so fine and so particular. Like you have to be I don't want to say OCD, but like you have to be so particular about the things that you're doing. Like it's there, every line, every blade of grass, like every paint, like it's so particular. And I have always just wanted to make that fun and make that, make people see that there's more to it than just the sweat and more to it than just the hard work aspect of it. So bringing that part of bringing homeowners to come and make their own containers, because so many people were like, we don't know how to make our own containers. And I'm like, how does somebody not know how to make their own containers? It's like the things that we go to school for and we know.
It's simple.
Yeah, it's like, what? People don't know how to do that? So really just listening to, the people that are in our community groups and are on our social media to tell us like, hey, we want to do this. We want to do this. And just making it happen. The great thing about the workshops is we're including our communities. So we're also, being able to, you guys said that you had a greenhouse and grew your own plants for the landscape around you. Like we were able to source our plants for the workshops from the local high school here that grew all of the fall plants. So, it's cool to be able to give back to. And I think that as more people hear about what we're doing and the options are endless as far as like where we could go and what things that we will try. Because I don't want to say no to anything. I think that we always want to try it out first and say, be able to put a reason with why we can't or why we shouldn't. And, like we've learned with our pop-up shops that we've had, like we created merchandise, like what you see me wearing right now, Plant Lady, like we created merchandise to help support the business. So I realized that a lot of the things that I was wearing were the t-shirts that we had made for those plant ladies for like the cruise and stuff. And then people were like, I want that. So like, hey, we'll just start selling merchandise. And that's been huge in helping to support our team because, my sister and I were not the revenue that's coming in. We're not bringing in a paycheck for this currently. Like we're pushing all of the funds that we receive to go towards the team. So towards that education piece of creating blog posts, creating videos, like all of that money is just flowing right through us and going to somebody else because we believe in the mission and we believe in, where this business is eventually going to go. And, hopefully one day we will pull a paycheck from it. So, there's a lot of learning curves with those pop-up shops. We learned that some of our local events weren't doing well. So we have now postponed everything or taken everything from in person to now we're trying to push the online shop. So really trying to sell online. And, I think being that it's COVID and the holidays, I think it'll be a perfect time to sell online and to not have to worry about setting up shop at events and risking health.
Christmas stocking stuffers. Just thought.
Exactly. Go check out
There
the
you go.
website.
Yeah. So with those plant ladies and taking designs that you create, um, as the leader of the group on the job site, how do you sort of inspire the workers to meet your standards, and how do you make sure that those standards are met in a sense of as the leader of the group and your leadership style?
So the hardest part about leading a team is leading a team. So everybody learns differently. Everybody, comprehends differently. I'm sure you being an educator, you see that in your students and the way that they get, what you're saying and how you have to, how they're learning and how they're taking all of it in. For us, especially, so I'll just say, for example, like Saturday, we have an installation that we're doing. It's a 2-part Saturday and then one on the part 2 is on Wednesday. And so Friday, we will have a meeting with all of our paid crew, a Zoom meeting, and I will have already videoed the property, talked about everything to expect, like set those expectations. To where whenever we get to that meeting, like I really want, because we do have volunteers coming in, that with, most of them have very minimal experience, and we are not just teaching them how to use hand tools, but, we're also teaching them how to use bigger equipment like tractors and augers and, all the things. We have a cool, we've been able to reach out to some of the rental companies, and they're like, hey, like we want to get in front of your team, and so they'll donate some rental equipment for us to use, which also helps out with the business, but
All the fun stuff.
all the fun stuff. So being able to set the expectations beforehand to the paid team to say, hey, like this is what to expect for installation day. Like we're going to be putting in 152 plants. This is the property has a steep slope. We've got to be careful, blah, blah, blah. Like setting all those expectations to where whenever we get on site on early Saturday morning, we usually do a breakthrough where we, or an icebreaker where we all introduce ourselves, what brought us to this point, blah, blah, blah. And then, I really want to be able to rely on the team to make sure that, yes, we're giving women the opportunity to come and learn, but we still are getting paid to install a landscape. So it still has to be up to my standards and up to, professional standards. So making sure that I'm giving my team members that opportunity to take that leadership on themselves and say, hey, like if they have a volunteer that's working with them, like this is why we do this. This is, this is the process. But also keeping eyes on the ground to make sure that, things are being done to perfection.
That's great. I love the idea of taking the video beforehand and having them know the site before they get there. That's awesome. Um, So something I didn't tell you earlier, in our landscape classes, what we do, we teach our kids landscape design through drawing and drafting and whatnot. We talked about before about Dynascape and all that. Um, what we do is we have a project at the end of the year where our kids are breaking down into teams or businesses where they come up with their business name and whatnot, and they're given a client, which is usually our administrative team. So either the principal, the assistant principal, athletic director, and they sort of go through the process of clientele business relationship, making adjustments on designs and a specific site on the grounds at Brentsville. So this past year, we actually had an area inside the football stadium that we redid with a patio. But again, there was a whole process where they had their own designs, their own ideas behind what the standard was set by their administrator. So the big thing you talked about earlier, that again, that's what we want to do in this program, is sort of showing them the process and then having them actually see the end result. So they give a big presentation to all of the admin, and they sort of select the bid that they think is best based on the budgeting, all the different aspects of the design and everything that sort of went into the understanding of what that is. What is it for you in the process that when you come up to the idea of the site evaluation, since you're doing things like across the country and you're not able to go to those sites, what is your process when you're designing? Because again, on Instagram, you have some of the best designs I've ever seen come from a before after standpoint. What is your process in that, and sort of giving the kids the idea so they can sort of like compare and contrast what they're going through in our class compared to what it really is like in the real world?
Yeah, so I will say that given my experience being hands-on in the industry and being actually, being in the landscapes before and doing the actual labor part of the job and solving problems, and just being like in person for the past 10 years and just being able to problem solve and like all of that has really played into me being able to do things virtually. I was thinking about this question earlier. I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't want to say that I couldn't have, but as far as never stepping foot on the property, I think that it would have been a bit difficult if I wouldn't have been able to if I wouldn't have had this experience um, in the
From former
industry.
sites, you mean? Sort of just like you saw something and then you can see it in, say, like a video.
Yes. So like being able to see certain situations, like being around other landscapes, being around, playing in the dirt, like knowing what it's like. And I think that being able to I think that in my mind I can problem solve. Like I refer back to those times that I was actually either like installing the landscapes or, other problems arose that I had to solve in the field, where whenever I'm designing and I go back to the drawing board, I always I'm usually designing around that. And especially being in the turf part of it, like it's not just, installing it, but it's how to maintain it. So, if you notice with most of my designs, I don't do corners. Like I do a lot of curves, and that is because of my mowing background and my turf background, because I've been the one that's had to mow all of those straight lines. And, you don't want to put yourself in a corner where you have to go get a weed eater and weed eat it. You want to be able to mow it all.
No, you don't.
So, I think that's, whenever I look back on my designs, I'm like, there's some things that I feel like I consistently do. But, I think that definitely talking with the clients and hearing what their pain points are for their landscape and really getting to know each of my clients and how they're going to interact within their landscape is huge. So, if you notice on whenever I'm sharing the befores and afters, like I really love the aspect of being able to connect with people all over the world, or all over the United States, the world eventually. But, being able to connect with people all over the United States and
I like that.
Get to hear their story of like what brought them to this point in their home, in their life. Especially right now, everybody's story is a little bit different than it was maybe say a year ago, and people are using their homes and their landscapes a little bit more than they would have a year ago. So really just listening to the things that, they find fulfillment in. So whether that's, they step outside on their lunch break and they sit on the patio and they, listen to the birds chirp, and it helps their mental state and it brings them back down, brings their anxiety level down or whatever, or when they come home from a long day's work and they see their kids play outside, like they want to have that space that their kids can play and get their energy out, but it still be beautiful. And just hearing my client stories really helps me to see the client in the actual landscape. And for me, that's huge because, I think the whole process of being able to say, each one of us has a different style and a different thing that we like. So, you might like oranges and reds, but I like blues and purples. So making sure that I'm incorporating the style of the homeowner into the landscape and being that I am working in all types of zones all over the United States, like that's another huge thing of making sure that the plants that I select are going to thrive in their location. And, that stretches me. I think that that's really helped me learn a lot new plants. But, I never want to be stuck in saying like, I know all that I know and that's it. Like I do always want to be learning. So I think that helps play into me personally of stretching what I know and learning more and gathering new information and new industry updates. And, that's really cool too for me. And then, whenever I sit down and start putting things into practice, like, talking about my process whenever, the homeowner takes pictures of their existing landscape and I set the expectations of what photos I need. And then they send me those photos and we walk through virtually on a phone call or a Zoom call where we discuss like their property and they walk me through each image of what they like, what they don't like. And, a lot of people don't have any idea what they do and what they don't like. They just know like they don't like what they see. And, those are fun too. I think that for me, I know one of the questions was like where do I pull inspiration from? Like a lot of that is Pinterest. So, not only for myself, but for my clients. So when somebody says, hey, like I really like one that I just finished up yesterday was I really like an English cottage style. And, that not only was for the landscape, but she also wanted me to add my touch to her house. So, I transformed. She was like, we just bought this house. I don't like it. It doesn't fit my style. I like English cottage. And, then she has I asked for inspirational images of things that she likes. And some of that can be as simple as the outfits that she wears, like could just be what I've had one client that he was a woodworker, and it was just like of his wood, like of his creations that he's created, his woodworking. And I was like, I pulled inspiration from that just in the way that he crafted things. And it helps me kind of get inside their brains of how they think and the things that they're attracted to. So yeah, whenever I get those inspirational images, we'll talk through all of that. And then that's where I'll start designing. And I'll design over top of their design. So as you can tell, like a lot of, if there's existing landscapes, then all of it will be photoshopped out. And then that's when I'll get that clean slate and start designing over top of that image. And I really, since I am a visual learner, for me, I did the hand drawing stuff. I took and I don't want to like diss any of those classes because they definitely helped me, but like I took the drafting classes in high school and college, and it helped me understand like, a lot of other aspects of this business. But for me, I need to be able to see what it's going to look like before I go install it. And so, people were coming to me and saying, hey, like, I'll give you this amount of budget if you can just like, they didn't even want a design. They just wanted me to do their landscape. And for me, I need to be able to see what it's going to look like before I can go and actually start throwing money at it, And for my clients, I think they really value that because they know that once they get this grand design or this master plan, like I say, that they can take it and break it into phases that, so then they can say, hey, like I know that we want to tackle phase one or I know we want to make phase one, the front of the house. So we'll do the front of the house now. We'll do phase two is the back of the house. Phase three is the pool, and that way they know like they have this plan that every dollar that they spend is going towards this plan. And it's not like just, well, I changed my mind. I don't like that anymore. So that has been huge for me as the designer to be able to see it come to life visually over top of their landscape because I know what I would do. I could always say, like, I see it. Like, I know what I want to do. Like, I see it. But I need to be able to put it on a program. Like, I need to be able to see it come to life. And through those digital designs, that's really helped me. Like I was touching on before, I did those by hand previously. And, there's only so many times you can draw a plant in color pencil and erase it. And really you can't. So
It gets
that's
annoying.
where it's very annoying. So being able to put that into a program, move it around again, change my mind, move it again another time. It's been very helpful and time saving.
It's also nice to just click a button and it all goes 3D for you,
I don't have that part yet.
Really?
So yeah, so mine doesn't do, I mean it does, but I don't think I utilize that because I think I would have to use I would have to be able to upload the house in 3D.
Gotcha.
So another part of the program that I use. So did you tell your students what I use?
Not yet, no.
So I use Real-Time Landscape Pro. Am I saying that right? Is that the right
I
thing?
think so, yes.
I think it's by Ideal Spectrum. And there's other great programs out there. For me, being a business owner, I was like, I'm going to go with the cheapest. And so the cheapest, but still good quality. So this was something that was right up my alley, and I purchased it and just, ran with it. And since then I found other programs that would work great. Some of them cost like $3,000, and the ones that I had in college, I wish that I could have too. It's very similar to the ones that I have, but I'm like, a couple $100 compared to $3,000, like I'll take the couple $100.
Pretty easy choice there.
Yeah. So that's the one that I've been using. I like that it features the nighttime, so I can do some nighttime outdoor lighting and stuff like that. But really just, whenever I'm trying to, people come to me and they're like, I want to be, I've opened up to have associates on my team. And, the biggest thing whenever I'm trying to teach other people what I do and to, try to walk them through my process is, really just sit down behind the computer and just do it. Like, just teach yourself, because and I know that's hard for me to say to somebody else, or for somebody else to like take in, is like, well, I need instructions. There are instructions, like there are videos of how-tos, how to do this, how to get started, but to be able to use your creativity and to put it onto paper and to like critique things, that's going to come, like that's just like painting a straight line on a football field. Like that takes practice, unless it's that guy that you had in class that was like sent from God or something.
He still does it. I don't get it.
Because those things take practice, and the more time that you spend doing it, the more time that you try to perfect it, the better you're going to be at it. So in that free time that you have, in those hours that you have, that you're at home and your family's driving you crazy, and you just can't get out and can't go see your friends, like spend that time on the computer and learn, take a picture of your own house and learn Photoshop, like learn how to erase the existing landscape, and then start using the program and implement the software onto your house. If I could, just start, because I've learned a lot, like from my very first design that I've done to where I'm at now. Like, I don't even want to show the first designs because it doesn't compare to what I'm doing now. And all of that has come because I have been doing it, and I've learned like what works for me. I've learned shortcuts, like I've learned things that work for me, things that don't work for me. And and that comes with experience. And I will say that part of my process is the other aspect of getting the design is the client gets the plant list, and So if you see that they have the numbered design, so I also number the plants on the plant or on the design separately. So they have that, they have the visual, and then they also have the numbered designs on top of that as well, so that they have the plant list that corresponds with that numbered design. And then I will price out those plants based on nurseries in their area. So that's another step of,
Just
Fawn
like
Renae design.
is it a separate key sort of just on the side?
What do you mean? Separate key?
So like you have numbers in the design and it goes to the key where like this is the plant this would be. Here's other options that are less expensive and stuff like that.
I don't do that much as like other options that are less expensive. I do give like a couple options. So mine's more or less like I don't pull it from the actual program. I will pull it from like I'll create my own invoice and make it on brand so that it looks like an invoice or like, a document that Fawn Renae Designs would create. And it says, like the numbers, the plant selection, both the scientific and the common name.
It just corresponds between the design and the actual document that you're getting. Okay. Just wanted to make sure that I was understanding.
And with each, so before they ever get the priced out plant list, they will get they get one revision. So, and this is like the most painful part as a designer, once somebody says, I don't really like that.
Let's change this over here. Let's do the whole thing again.
Yeah. That's the hardest part, is when somebody critiques your masterpiece. And, but I do work for the client. So it is their piece of art too. So, having to go back and change it. And a lot of times they have very minimal critiques to make, whether it's just like subbing out plants for a different variety that they know that they don't like, but they didn't know that they didn't like it until it was in the plant list and they looked it up. Things like that.
So how is it that you make your plant selection? Like, what do you look for when you what is it like you see an area and you're like, oh, I should put a tree here? Like what, or like a bush, or what makes you think those things?
Good point. So a lot of it depends on the client style. So if the client is like, I like to ask, especially if they don't know what style they like, then I will ask things like, if you could go anywhere in the world, like if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you want to live? And if they say like, they would love the mountains, they love, rolling hills and fall colors, things like that, then that's kind of like a red flag that they like, more of the mountain plants like laurels and, more of the trees and evergreens and things like that. If they, and also with their maintenance preference. So if I get a client that says, we're literally never going to step outside, like we'll make sure it gets watered, but we just want it to look pretty and they're not going to hire anybody to maintain it, then I'll make sure that I get very, very low maintenance plants, such as like perennials, or, that just require water and some fertilizer and they don't require a lot of hedging and trimming, things like that. But from a designer's eye, whenever I'm looking at the house, that there's one thing to say, like, just put a bunch of trees out there. But whenever I'm designing, a lot of it plays off the actual architecture of the house. So, if there are tall pieces of the house, like a tall, overhang or whatever, like kind of like balancing out the house. And I always say that when I look at a house and a landscape, I want my eye to constantly flow. So I want to be able to look. I don't want to like look at a landscape and get so focused on one plant. Like I want to continually look from left to right all the way across the landscape. So I'm always looking, like I want to add height where height is needed, and I want to add color in groups where grouping is needed. So I want it to constantly like roll and go up and down and, have interest all the way around. I don't want to just add like a beautiful plant right here that has a lot of color but it doesn't, like, I don't want to add a red plant here and then a bunch of purple here, because red and purple really don't go together. unless you have some plants that have a little touch of red and purple, so like a lot of it is colors, textures, like I said, with what the client likes, their style, their interest of where they would love to visit or live in the world. If they say they love Palm Springs and they love the desert, like I'm going to incorporate some plants that look like agave and cacti, like it's going to be a lot of that desert style feel, a lot of rock and other dry elements.
So thank you for everything with that. Because again, like I always talk to different people who always ask me questions about what do I want to put here, what do I want to put there. Maintenance is the number one thing that I always look at, because it's, you could make something as beautiful as your design, and then the next year half of it is not maintained and it looks terrible. So I think that is very
Exactly.
important for them to understand, which is awesome. With your company, and with the design portion and the actual those plant ladies, um, the focus is a lot more residential. Is that correct in what I'm saying?
It is, like I said, we are a year in, so that is.
I completely understand. Is there aspirations to get into that commercial space? Because especially up here in like Northern Virginia, we have places like Tyson's Corner where like it's a massive mall and everything in between. There's just a bunch of landscape being put in and whatnot. And having those bigger contracts, do you have aspirations to sort of grow into that, or have you been doing that and I just haven't noticed?
Yeah, so I've worked with people so it's from like for the designs, I have done designs on the commercial part aspect of things. Like I've done the bigger buildings, I've done some of those. But as far as like, when we're installing it, like that would definitely be an avenue that we could explore. We haven't installed any bigger commercial size projects. But as far as like maintaining, I don't really think that is the direction right now that we are going. And I would say that because, for one, I'm making sure that we're putting the right people in the right place. So, as we continue to grow and as we continue to potentially have that maintenance aspect of what we do, because, for me, the biggest thing is whenever we install that landscape with those plant ladies, we really try to walk the property with the homeowner and have the homeowner out there, show them how to water, show them how, like, the things to pay attention to for disease and other things. And they get that plant care guide. And, we feel pretty confident when we leave the site that they know what they're doing. And we are that resource whenever we leave. But there is still that part of me that is like, man, I really wish that we could just go back and make sure, like, because I don't want it to die. And I really want to make
Come
sure,
back in
because
5 days, 6 months.
yeah, and we do, like, we go back and within like a week or so. But I want to be able. We've installed some grand landscapes, and the homeowners are the ones that are maintaining it. And I think that this is a avenue that we will be exploring soon. Not so much on the commercial side just yet, but as far as like that maintenance of being able to maintain the landscapes that we have already installed. And I think that I've been doing maintenance for the past 10 years, and being that I'm exploring this creative outlet of the of the landscape designs and growing this other business too, and it just being so much that I really can't devote my time to, for me personally to be the one that's going and back out and solving problems, and solving the problems of what's going on in the landscape, and so just relying on other people and hiring the right people to go and take care and trim when it needs to be trimmed. Because, whenever I'm designing landscapes that are based on, they're probably about 3 to 5 years grown in those actual designs, probably 3 years, roughly 3 years grown. So whenever you put in those 1 to 3-gallon plants, like it doesn't look like that design. So it looks like a very small scale version of it. And, at each year, especially with perennials, like those are going to keep getting thicker and thicker and better, but they need to be properly taken care of. So, I think for me, I probably just want to find the fulfillment in seeing that come to life, and seeing that actually match the design from, 5 years from now or 3 years from now, whenever. But, we'll get there. I do want to be able to do the maintenance, but, as far as the time that I have, I personally cannot do that, but training somebody or a team who can go out and maintain and make sure that these properties are taken care of for many years after we leave, because our homeowners, our clients trust us. They've trusted me since from the beginning as far as designing, and then they've went on to trust those plant ladies and for me to install it and to make sure that it's healthy. And they're like, well, then what? So I think, if I'm being honest and I'm listening to our clients, they want us to come back and they want us to offer that. So there's just another movement of growth.
So, with your experience in the turf grass, have you ever, and talking about maintenance here, have you ever considered opening up a part like a lawn care maintenance portion of your company?
Definitely. So, my sister, she keeps saying, you know, you know so much about grass. Like, she's like, I need to know what to do with for my own yard. Like, so much. And, she went to school for this. So,
No need to remind her.
yeah. So, oh, I do.
We'll see what your front yard's winning now,
Yeah, yeah. So, I definitely want to be able to use that knowledge and the past 10 years experience in the sports field and turf grass industry, towards growing, those plant ladies and growing this business. I think that, I've said before, like, I want to have my own greenhouse. I want to have my own sports field. Like, I want to have my own, I want to have it all. But, I think that that's where starting small and starting that small foundation and getting that solid foundation, before we continue to move on. And, there's more responsibility as we push into different realms, into different avenues. I don't have anybody on the team other than myself who is a professional in sports field or in turf grass. So, there's room for growth there and expanding our team and finding the right person. I have a lot of people, like, within my own neighborhood. I have had about 6 or 7 homes for the first time that have just reached out to me and was like, hey, I like your yard. Can you do mine? And so, and I haven't been able to do the work. I've had to hire out another neighbor to go and do the work because I don't have time to go and aerate and seed and all of that and spray. Like, I don't have time to do that. I barely have time to do my own. So, yeah, I would love to have I would love to be able to use what I have learned in the sports field and turf grass industry and use that for my own business. So, like I said earlier, the options are endless. So, yes, to your question, I would love to have something turf grass related, sports field related, lawn care related. With that, like I mentioned, the calendar does have a lawn care portion in that. So we're kind of slowly introducing lawn care. So that's kind of like, the trickle in as we continue to expand.
That's awesome. Because again, with all that background, it really is something you can really grow with. And there's always a lawn. That's what I
That's
tell
right.
all the kids. There's always grass wherever you're gonna
Yep.
go. So I wanted to say something. You're such an inspiration to women throughout the industry, and I believe you're doing so much for our industry as a turf landscape, just green industry overall. Especially inspiring young women who are hesitant to enter what you said like earlier, a male dominant industry. Could you please speak to the young ladies in this this meeting and sort of what you believe it's important to know when entering something like this?
Yeah. It seemed, I love that you have quite, you said that you're almost 50-50 as far as the ratio from male and female. So that's great. Whenever I was in it, it was very lonely. I had my sister up until I went and pursued my career. And, I always just wanted that sense of camaraderie and that girlfriend to be like, you know, just kind of like make silly jokes with. Because, I get along great with guys, but you can't deny the fact that men and women aren't made differently and that we think a little bit differently. And, I think
You're
that
much
it's
smarter.
easy. Thank you. I wouldn't say that for all, but, I think that just being able to have confidence amongst a group of guys was super hard. I think that every industry event that I went to, um, every, conference, every event, like everything like that, I seemed to be the only female, and it was super intimidating, but I knew what I wanted to do. Like I knew that this was the path that I was going to take. And, um, I tried to use those hard days, those hard times of being, I don't want to say that it, this day and time, people say when you say like I am for women empowerment or I'm a feminist, like it gets taken to the extreme. So I never want it to be taken to where like we are say like yes, women, no men, because that's not, even in this business, like that's not at all what we're doing. We've had men be a part of what we're doing too. Um, but I just want, like, I remember how lonely it was. And I remember feeling, even in that management position that I had where I was, I'm 5'2" and roughly 110 pounds. And most guys were on my team were twice as big as I was, twice as tall as I was, what it seems. And, but I could still outwork them any day. And I do have that. So I always tried to be the hardest worker in the room, but whenever I was in leadership and I was still that female, we would get deliveries, we would get, people within rank coming in and, walk right past me looking towards one of my guys because they just automatically thought that they were the leader. And to me, especially young and starting out, that really got to me. And, I spitfired a lot, learned to have a lot of tough skin working with all men. But, it taught me, like, I only did that so much. And then to hear the responses of those people say like, oh, I'm so sorry, like I just didn't know, like it's not like I intentionally did it, it was just that I just didn't think that you were the one that was in charge, like I just didn't think that was you were the person I was supposed to go to. And I think that plays into to changing the standard and to changing what it looks like for women in the industry, and showing what it looks like for women to do this and to be of my size, to be of all sizes, and to be taken seriously and to be, looked at as a professional and not just, I remember when I worked at the Panthers and I was approached on game day by one of the camera guys where they looked at me and they said, how did you get this job? And it's like, what? Like, I went to school for it just like everybody else here did, like, what does that mean? Or, showing up for conferences and people looking at me and saying, well, whose wife are you? Or whose date are you? And it's like, what? Like, I'm not anybody's date. Like, I'm here because this is what I want to do for a living. So, there's been a lot of struggles and a lot of challenges, but if I could say anything, it's just to stick with it and to stick with your gut. Like, I wish that I wouldn't have been as fiery as I was in the beginning because, I feel like I probably stepped on some toes, but I think that helped me realize the other person that was making those that I was encountering, and hearing their heart and hearing that, hey, like I didn't mean to do that. Like I didn't mean to come across that way. I didn't, it's just like that you're not normal. Like this isn't normal. Like I just didn't think that you were the person that was in charge. So, be confident in who you are, be confident in what you're out there to do, be the hardest worker in the room, on the field, be the person who shows up the earliest, be the last one to leave, be the one who goes above and beyond even when everybody else is trying to cut corners, like just prove it. If you're not proving it to anybody else, prove it to yourself.
That's amazing. And I applaud you because you are really changing everything for a lot of women who are looking to enter this industry. I have a student who's down at Virginia Tech right now, pursuing turf. So again, it means a lot to them. So thank you. So I'm gonna wrap it up. And I wanted to bring this up because when I was on your site, this spoke volumes to what your company is and sort of who you are. It says, I'm an exterior designer, a visual creator, a hardworking, landscaping, overachieving motivator, and outdoor loving mama. So, as a person who's observing, that is your brand, and that's who you are as a person, as a company, as the second company, as those plant ladies, everything. How important is that to you? And how is it that you can sort of bring all that full circle in your business?
It's huge for me. When I think about there's so many businesses that are out there, even in this industry, where it's completely work, and then it's like you take off one hat and then you put on the other. And for me, especially becoming a mom, I realized that I have a lot of different hats that I carry or that I wear, and I realized that speaking up about who I am as a person and as a human has helped me be able to connect with those people who could potentially become clients. Like me being able to share my pain points and to be able to share my story and to be able to share a bit more about me as a person helps people to be able to know, and ultimately trust me, so that when it comes time that they are looking for a designer and they are looking for somebody to take care of their landscape, it's like a no, there's no question. We're going to go with her because we know what she's about. We know her purpose. We know, that she works hard at this and that this is what, she's going to take care of us the best. And, I think that that's why I never really wanted to start a business initially, especially out of school, is because I saw all these other businesses that were like, still bigger names, but it didn't look like, you really never know the person. And when you go to their websites, even if they're like smaller landscape maintenance companies, whatever, when you go to those websites, you still don't know who's the face that's going to be coming to your house. Like you're welcoming them into your private place, your home. And when you want somebody to come to your house, like you want to be able to trust that they're going to take care of you and that they're going to be somebody that you would let come inside. And, for me, like if I'm looking for somebody who, say like I'm going to get a pressure washer, or I'm going to go and get, I'm going to explore another company or work with another company. I'm always looking to find out more about who they are. And if I can't find out on their website, I'm going to go to social media and I'm going to search them until I can find them, and because to me, I need to be able to know whether that's who's going to be, coming to my house or who's going to be working on my team, or, I want to be able to trust that person. And in a world where, yes, you can put anything on the internet, you can say anything you want. You can have a great bio page, you can have great all of that, but showing up regularly and showing up for the people and giving content away or giving education away and just continuing to bring value to people with nothing in return is why people trust me and why people find value in the things that I'm doing. And, people want to be a part of that. And especially if they see if there's a bigger movement behind it, like those plant ladies, I always thought that it was just my sister and I when we first got started. But then, as like I said, when more people wanted to be a part of it, I was like, we are not just those plant ladies. Like those plant ladies is huge. Like this is every plant lady or plant guy, like this is more than just us. And people want to be a part of that because they've heard our stories. They've heard our pain points. They know the things that we like. And, I'm a person where I like to laugh and I like to have fun and, mixed with professionalism. And I like to show that too. And I want to be around people who can make me laugh. So, especially on social media when things can kind of get, especially today and in this world, it can get a bit political and it can get, it can get heated. I just want to be that space and that outlet where people can be like, did you see what they were doing? Like that's silly. And that made me laugh. And, there's been a lot of people who've connected with us and they've said, I was having a really bad day and then I watched like your goofy video and it really brought me joy today. Like, thank you. And so that's the reason why we do that. And, I want to show what it looks like to have fun and to have laughs, to have a good time. I mean, at our installations, like we have music going, we do some dancing, like we try and have fun. We try to crank out some TikTok videos if we have time, like on lunch break or something. We try and make it interesting. And try and do like what people want to do. Because like I said, like that just goes to show who I am and be a part of this business that's not, I don't want to be so stiff and like, I can still wear, I can still wear all the hats and wear the pantsuit and be the professional. But at the end of the day, like I'm a human. I have a personality. I have a life. I wear a lot of hats. I am a mom. I do love the outdoors, like, and that's what helps other people relate to me.
Fantastic. And again, like I said, I think that's so awesome that's the highlight of the website. So we're going to open it up to some questions. Does anybody have any questions? We only have time for one.
No questions?
No questions, guys? Come on.
Not even from the ladies?
Come on. Katie, I know you have a question.
Anything. So y'all need to go and get your plant lady shirts.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate the time. This was phenomenal. I think that one of the best we've done so far. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that.
Of course.
I was thinking about, as far as like the inspire part, like this speaking with you and your students really goes towards that mission and towards what I love to do and to be able to hopefully inspire the next generation being your students to, get involved in this industry or to think of a different business avenue that nobody else has thought about and to give them confidence to step outside the box and go for it.
That's fantastic. What do you guys say?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You guys connect with me on social media. I'd be glad to talk with you guys and answer any other questions that you have.
I'll be sure to get that out to them. Thank you again so much. I really appreciate it.